Hi, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Proud to live in the greatest country in the world. Unfiltered opinions, no PC discussion here. Agree, disagree, hate it, love it, it's all good. Sit back and enjoy some unfiltered commentary. We discuss politics, culture, interviews, and more. Your comments are always welcome. Please help the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. And as always, thanks for your support. Hi, folks. Welcome back. From the Daily Journal. Let me start by saying all hell's breaking loose. I'm 64 years old, and there's been a lot of cases, Supreme Court on constitutional matters in my lifetime. Roe v. Wade, Brown versus the Board of Education, Bush v. Gore, and there's several others. And they've all been very important, and they've all shaped our country by their decisions. Texas files suit in U.S. Supreme Court against 4 states alleging they violated constitutional provisions in the 2020 election. You're saying, well, how the hell could Texas? There's Ken Paxton, by the way, the Attorney General of Texas, stand-up guy. Texas is saying, you guys broke your own Constitution laws, and you broke the laws of the U.S. Constitution. And you basically changed the rules as you went along to make it so there's this huge cloud now over this election in certain states because of what you guys did. That's in essence of what he's saying. And it has an effect on Texas and the entire country. Now, this is filed. It goes directly to the Supreme Court. Now, they could not take it. I don't think they would turn this away. Not even Justice Roberts would say, no, we're not going to hear it. I don't believe that. If he does, there'll be a crap storm like you've never heard, because I think this case should be heard. Let me read the article. The state of Texas has filed a lawsuit with the U.S. Supreme Court against the states of Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, challenging their administration of the 2020 presidential election. The lawsuit was filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton on Monday and alleges the 4 battleground states illegally changed election policies, and they all did. Many more states than them, but those 4, which led to widespread voter fraud, or at least it left the windows open for widespread voter fraud. Paxton has asked the Supreme Court to block the 4 states whose certified election results all showed Joe Biden winning from voting Electoral College. You said, oh, wait a minute. He's just trying to get Donald Trump elected. Well, this isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the U.S. Constitution. For years you hear in the media from the leftists and the Democrats that the Constitution is a living document. Horse crap. It's not a living document. It's very, very, very difficult to amend on purpose because it's not a living document. It is the document and its text that has held this republic together for over 200 years. It is the best written form of government written down on paper in the history of the world. It is the most important document, I believe, ever written in the world. But that's just my personal opinion. And it always takes precedence over anything else, the U.S. Constitution. I'm in upstate New York. I used to be a city councilman. Every elected official takes an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Every single elected person, period. And many appointed people as well. We'll go to presidential oath, governors, city councilmen, you name it, highway superintendents, if you need to be sworn in, they all uphold their oath to the Constitution. That's how important it is. So this is not about Donald Trump. This is about the Constitution, and it's about damn time. This is the suit. This is the lawsuit. Forget all the rest. Nothing against Mr. Giuliani or Sidney or any other lawsuits, and there's dozens and dozens of them all over. This is the lawsuit. This is the case. Faction argues that all 4 states named in the lawsuit violated the Electors Clause, Equal Protection, and Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The 154-page complaint asked the court to accept the lawsuit for review and ultimately enjoin the use of unlawful election results without review and ratification by the defendant states' legislatures and remand it to the defendant states' respective legislatures to appoint presidential electors in a manner consistent with the Electors Clause. What that means in English is they're not asking for the electors not to be counted. So Joe Biden doesn't get 270 and the House picks Donald Trump. What they're saying is this thing is so clouded and it's been so screwed up by the states certifying this, it's wrong. We want the state legislators. I live in New York. New York's not one of the cases, but in New York it would be the New York State Assembly. And every state has its Senate, lower and upper chamber. They want the elected officials, directly elected by the people of that state, to decide who the electors choose. They could very well choose Joe Biden. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the Constitution and how the Democrats in the Democrat cities in these states, the big cities, played fast and loose with the rules and made up the rules you go along and used the pandemic as cover. This is exactly what this is about. And believe me, anybody that knows my channel, I'm a huge Donald Trump fan. Huge supporter. If this case were about Donald Trump not being president again, not being reelected, I would be all for it. The Constitution takes priority over everything. Over the presidency, over Congress. The Constitution has to be upheld. Not when it's just convenient. And they're talking about the Equal Protection Clause in here. Some ballots were allowed to be corrected, whatever errors were in them, and some in certain parts of states were not allowed at all and rejected. That's a two-tiered system. That's against the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. Let me continue on. President Donald Trump's legal team has filed lawsuits challenging election outcomes in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The lawsuits allege that fraudulent ballots were counted and cites other voting irregularities. State legislative hearings were held in Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, during which a number of individuals testified to irregularities in the state's election process. A public hearing to investigate the election is scheduled for December 11th at the Wisconsin State Capitol. Assembly Majority Leader Jim Stanky, Republican, announced, saying, "We owe it to the voters of Wisconsin that all claims of voter fraud are investigated." The Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society has filed lawsuits, and they go on, violations. December 8th is a safe harbor day, the date which states are to have chosen their electors unless election results are questioned. The Electoral College is scheduled to cast their ballots for president December 14th. The Armistead Project alleges illegal conduct by state and local officials led to more than 1.2 million potentially fraudulent ballots, including illegal votes that were counted and legal votes that were not counted, because they played fast and loose, I should say, with the rules and used the pandemic as a cover. And those of you who think this is a partisan issue, of the 4 states, Pennsylvania has a Republican legislature, Democrat governor. Georgia has a Republican legislature and a Republican governor. Michigan has a Republican legislature, Democrat governor. I'm not sure on the breakdown of Wisconsin. I don't remember off the top of my head. So this is both parties here, folks. Though rigorous investigations supporting our litigation were demonstrated that state and local officials brazenly violated election laws in several swing states in order to advance a partisan political agenda. I believe that to be true. As a result, it is impossible for those states to determine their presidential electors in line with the arbitrary deadline set forth via federal statute in 1948. And thus, the only deadline that matters is January 20th, 2021. January 20th is Election Day. The Texas lawsuit states the 2020 election suffered from significant and unconstitutional irregularities in these 4 states, including amendments made to states' duly enacted election laws, not made by the legislature, not made by their legislators, which violate the Constitution's Electors Clause. That's true. That is correct. I'm not even a lawyer, and I know that's true. The legislatures have to change the rules concerning their elections in their individual states, not the officials and the election board or the governor's offices. The legislature, which directly represents the people of that state, which vests state legislatures with plenary authority regarding the appointment of presidential electors. In the end, all state legislators are responsible for appointing electors. Texas argues the states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin also violated the interstate differences in the treatment of voters, with more favorable allotted to voters, whether lawful or unlawful, in areas administered by local government under Democrat control, and with populations with higher ratios of Democrat voters than other areas of defendant states. In other words, when it was heavy Democrat area like a big city rather than a rural area, the big city Democrats got to correct their ballots where the rural ones didn't. It's not equal under the law, the 14th Amendment violation, and it's true. The complaint states that the appearance of voting irregularities in these 4 states would be consistent with the unconstitutional relaxation of ballot integrity protections in those states' election laws. There you have it. That's what happened in this entire election through the whole country. One side decided they were going to use COVID as cover and change the rules as they went along to their advantage. Would be consistent with the unconstitutional relaxation of ballot integrity protections in those states' election laws. They put holes in them on purpose and used the cover of a pandemic. Ultimately, all these flaws and irregularities Texas lists in its complaint, even the violations of state election law, violate one or more of the federal requirements for elections, i.e. equal protection, due process, and the Electors Clause, and thus arise under federal law. The complaint cites Bush v. Gore, in which the Supreme Court held that a significant departure from the legislative scheme for appointing presidential electors presents a federal constitutional question. Because these 4 states' electoral irregularities exceeding the hanging Chad saga of the 2000 election in the degree of departure from both state and federal law. These flaws affect an outcome determinative of popular votes in a group of states that cast outcome determinative numbers of electoral votes. In other words, the holes that were put as you made up the rules as you go along in these states diluted the votes from the people in the state of Texas. In essence, that's what that means. Paxton said these 4 states exploited the COVID-19 pandemic to justify ignoring federal and state election laws and unlawfully enacted last-minute changes, thus skewing the results of the 2020 general election. All true. I don't care what side you're on. That happened. The battleground states flooded their people with unlawful ballot applications and ballots while ignoring statutory requirements as to how they were received, evaluated, and counted. And there you have it. While ignoring statutory requirements as how they were received, evaluated, and counted. Trusting the integrity of our election process is sacrosanct and binds our citizenry and the state in this union together. Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin destroyed that trust. True. And compromised the security and integrity of the 2020 election. The states violated statutes enacted by their duly elected legislatures, thereby violating the Constitution. Paxton continued, by ignoring both state and federal law, these states have not only tainted the integrity of their own citizens' vote, but of Texas and every other state that held lawful elections. Also true. We're all connected, folks. If they cheated, it dilutes and makes unequal the votes of other states that followed the rules. Their failure to abide by the rule of law casts a dark shadow of doubt over the outcome of the entire election. We now ask the Supreme Court step in to correct this egregious error. Elections for federal office must comport with federal constitutional standards. The Attorney General's office notes for presidential elections, each state must appoint its electors to the Electoral College according to the Electors Clause of the U.S. Constitution. This requirement states that only state legislatures may set the rules governing the appointment of electors and elections that cannot be delegated to local officials. They cannot be delegated to them. The responsibility is the legislatures in that state which they want to send this to. The majority of the rush decisions made by local officials were not approved by the state legislatures, thereby circumventing the Constitution, the Texas Attorney General's office argues. Texas falls under the Supreme Court's Fifth Circuit jurisdiction, overseen by Justice Samuel Alito. Alito is expected to rule on a separate case related to Pennsylvania on Tuesday. This all is correct. What a brilliant interpretation of what happened. Absolutely brilliant interpretation. My understanding, this is what they said. And let me read this, because I think this is incredibly important. Lawful elections are at the heart of our constitutional democracy. The public, indeed, the candidates themselves, have a compelling interest in ensuring that the selection of a president, any president, is legitimate. If that trust is lost, the American experiment will flounder. A dark cloud hangs over the 2020 election. Our country stands at an important crossroads. This is important. Either the Constitution matters and must be followed. Let me repeat that again. Either the Constitution matters and must be followed, even when some officials consider it inconvenient or out of date. Or is it simply a piece of parchment on display at the National Archives? We ask the court to choose the former. The Constitution must prevail over anyone, even Donald Trump. If that's the way it goes, and this is upheld, and Joe Biden gets the electors, then that's the way it is. If Donald Trump gets them, then that's the way it is. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about how they played fast and loose with the rules and put their thumbs on the scale and were in violation of several portions of the U.S. Constitution. If they don't uphold the Constitution, our republic teeters on the edge of a cliff. That is the document that has held us together for more than 200 years and has stood the test of time, battered and bruised, but still there. This is an unbelievably important case, brilliantly explained. And we're going to see, and I pray to God that the Supreme Court at least hears it, because it'll be one of those cases that will go down in history 100 years from now, if our republic, I pray, is still here. This is one of the most important cases in my lifetime, and I'm 64. And until next time, folks, goodbye and good luck.